Unwanted is the latest foster care memoir from Cathy Glass. This was released, I think, 3 days ago, and needless to say, I jumped on it as soon as it came out. In fact, that's a lie. I read it before it came out because I bought part one and part two first, which were released slightly earlier because I couldn't wait. And it's very different, very, very different to pretty much every other foster care memoir from Cathy Glass. This is not her first mother and baby placement, but it is definitely one of the most unique because she's fostering, I believe, a 20-year-old. I think Lara was 20 years old. And she's got a 1-year-old son called Arthur. And Arthur had bruises that were not deemed to be accidental, they were non accidental injuries. And Lara had been in what transpires quite quickly is a pretty violent relationship with somebody called Diesel, and she's kind of walked away from that and has agreed to do this 4-month placement where basically Cathy will watch Lara looking after Arthur to make sure that she's deemed fit to parent her child because of these non-accidental injuries. Even though I think everybody's in agreement that Lara didn't give Arthur these injuries, that they were definitely from her ex-partner. She still has to undergo this placement, which, some people may say is not fair because there's no evidence that she hurt her child, but at the same time, she left her child in the care of somebody she knew was causing, or suspected was causing these injuries. And it's really different because first of all, Lara is an adult. She's a fully grown adult who can make her own decisions. Usually when there's a mother and child placement, it's a teenager Cathy is looking after, and she still has to make some decisions about when the teenager is allowed out and what they're allowed to do with their own time, and is usually a lot more hands-on with parenting. But also Arthur is 1 year old, and Lara's looked after him for quite a good length of time, and apart from not really being aware that she needs to watch him 24/7, she doesn't seem to be a bad parent, but she definitely seems to have her priorities in the wrong place, and this is something that, as a reader, we hope she irons out with Cathy's help. Whether or not that's the case, I'm not going to say, but I really enjoyed it. It was definitely very different. This is also set um, during part of the pandemic, I think during the second wave of lockdown. Honestly, that all feels like a distant memory to me now. So to have all of these things detailed again about, elbow touching and the various tiers for social distancing. In the UK, we had different tiers. I'm not sure if that's the case everywhere. And just these little things that were so everyday and so commonplace not that long ago. It's just so weird to be reminded of all of these things. And of course, how it affected Lara. She definitely wasn't very happy that she couldn't go out and socialise with people. But there is another character in this, Frazer, and I don't want to say too much about him because I don't want to spoil kind of his involvement in this. But certainly, his perspective was very fascinating, and also what happened with him during the pandemic was not something I'd really thought of before, and I thought that was pretty interesting as well. So there is a kind of sub-narrative running through it, but everything ties together really well. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. Yes, I prefer the ones about children who are, really misbehaving, and it's really challenging to look after them because I think they make a more compelling read. But as a change of pace, Unwanted is really brilliant. The title maybe seems a bit misleading, but it makes sense. You get to a certain point and there's actually a chapter called Unwanted, and it makes sense. But it's not that Arthur is unwanted. I really enjoyed it. I didn't expect anything else, to be perfectly honest. If you're a fan of Cathy Glass and you've not yet read this, thoroughly recommend it. I do recommend you read her books in order just because I feel it's a more enjoyable experience. But you absolutely do not need to do that if you want to go in with Unwanted straight away. Thoroughly recommend it. Really, really enjoyed it.